The little bell above the door of the ice cream shop chimed, a happy, tinkling sound that felt like a lie to Lily's ears. She sat across from her boyfriend, Mark, her hands wrapped around a milkshake she hadn't touched. The whipped cream was melting into a sad, white puddle. Mark was talking, but his words had started to blur together, sounding sharp and distant all at once. He was saying things like not working out and need some space, but his eyes were darting around the shop, looking at other people, never really landing on her. Lily felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't a private, sad conversation. This was a performance, and she was the one about to be pushed off the stage. She took a small breath, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mark, can we please talk about this somewhere else? Not here." Her plea was soft, a fragile thing in the noisy room. But Mark just shook his head, a smirk playing on his lips. "Why? There's nothing more to say, Lily. It's over." And then, as if to prove his point, he turned in his seat and waved over a girl from a nearby booth, a girl with shiny hair and a bright, laughing smile who Lily had never seen before. The girl slid into the seat next to Mark, and he immediately put his arm around her, both of them now looking at Lily as if she was a boring movie they had already finished watching. That was the moment Lily's heart didn't just break, it shattered into a million tiny, sharp pieces. The humiliation washed over her like a wave, hot and cold at the same time. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the shop on her. People were whispering behind their menus, stealing glances at the girl being dumped. She saw the pity in some of their faces, and the amusement in others. Tears began to well up in her eyes, burning and insistent. But a fiercer, stronger feeling rose up inside her, pushing the tears back. Anger. She was not going to let Mark see her cry. She was not going to walk out of this ice cream shop with her head down, defeated. She refused to be his sad little story. Her mind raced, desperate for a way out, for any way to salvage her pride. Her eyes scanned the room wildly, looking for an escape, for an idea, for anything. And that's when she saw him. In the far corner, tucked away in a booth shadowed from the main lights, was a man sitting alone. He wasn't looking at her, or at the scene with Mark. He was just reading a newspaper, a single, untouched cup of coffee in front of him. He was tall, she could tell even while he was sitting down, and he was dressed in a simple but sharp black suit that looked too formal for an ice cream shop. He seemed calm, completely separate from the chaos of her world. He was an island of quiet in her storm. A reckless, crazy, wonderful idea exploded in her mind. It was so bold and so stupid that it almost took her breath away. Before she could think about it anymore, before fear could stop her, she stood up. Her legs felt like jelly, but she forced them to move. She walked away from Mark and his new friend, her heart hammering against her ribs so loudly she was sure the whole shop could hear it. The distance to the corner booth felt like a mile. Every step was a struggle, her mind screaming at her to turn back. Finally, she stood before his table. He hadn't looked up from his paper. Close up, he was even more intimidating. His shoulders were broad, his hands holding the paper were strong and clean. She swallowed hard, her mouth dry as dust. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice trembling so much he barely recognized it. Slowly, he lowered the newspaper. His eyes met hers, and Lily felt a jolt. They were the color of a stormy sky, a deep, dark gray, and they held no emotion at all. He didn't look confused or annoyed. He just looked at her, patiently, waiting. It was the most terrifying look she had ever received. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Please, can you kiss me? I want to make him jealous." She gestured weakly with her head back towards Mark. She expected him to laugh, to tell her to get lost, to look at her like she was insane. But he didn't. He simply continued to look at her, his gaze intense and searching. It felt like he was looking right through her panic and her shame, seeing everything she was feeling. He took in her tear-filled eyes, her flushed cheeks, her trembling hands. Several long, silent seconds passed. Then, without a single word, he folded his newspaper and placed it neatly on the table. He stood up, and Lily had to tilt her head back to look at his face. He was so much taller than she had imagined, a solid, powerful presence that seemed to block out the rest of the room. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace. One of his hands came up and gently cupped her cheek. His touch was surprisingly warm. His other hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer to him. Lily's mind went completely blank. She couldn't think, she couldn't breathe. She just closed her eyes. And then he kissed her. It wasn't a short, peck-like kiss meant for a stage. It was a real kiss. A slow, confident, and deeply possessive kiss. His lips were firm yet soft against hers, moving with a certainty that made her knees feel weak. He wasn't rushing. It was a kiss that said he had all the time in the world, and in this moment, she belonged to him. The noisy ice cream shop, the staring people, Mark, it all faded away into a distant hum. There was only the feel of his lips, the scent of his clean, spicy cologne, and the solid strength of his body against hers. Time seemed to stretch and bend. When he finally pulled away, the world came crashing back. Lily was gasping for air, her head spinning. The shop was utterly, completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. She dared a glance towards her old table. Mark was staring, his mouth hanging wide open in shock. The girl next to him looked just as stunned. Everyone was frozen. The stranger didn't seem to notice or care about the audience. He kept one hand on her waist, steadying her, and leaned down until his mouth was right beside her ear. His breath was warm against her skin as he spoke in a low, quiet voice that was meant only for her. That was a dangerous game to play, little one, he murmured, and his words sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. If I kiss you again, it won't be for him. It will be for me. And I never let go of what is mine. The spell broke. Embarrassment, confusion, and a wild, thrilling panic overwhelmed her. She stumbled back from him, her hand flying to her lips, which still tingled from his kiss. She couldn't look at him anymore. Without saying a word, she turned and practically ran for the door, pushing it open and bursting out onto the sunny sidewalk. She ran down the street, not stopping until she was around the corner and out of sight, leaning against a brick wall, trying to catch her breath and make sense of what had just happened. Back in the ice cream shop, the man watched her go. A faint, almost invisible smile touched his lips. He picked up his coffee, took one last sip, and placed some money on the table. As he walked out, his stormy eyes swept across the room, and everyone quickly looked down at their desserts, suddenly very interested in their ice cream. Mark visibly shrank in his seat. The man's name was Leo, and he was the most powerful and feared man in the city. And now, he knew exactly who Lily was. The game, whether she knew it or not, was just beginning. The frantic beat of Lily's heart was a drum in her ears long after the ice cream shop was far behind her. She didn't stop running until the stitch in her side was a sharp, burning pain, forcing her to lean against the cool brick wall of a quiet alley. Her fingers touched her lips, which still felt warm and strangely alive from a stranger's kiss. The man's words echoed in her mind, a low, relentless whisper beneath the city's noise. I never let go of what is mine. What had she done? Who was that man? The questions swirled in a dizzying storm of shame and a confusing, thrilling fear. She had wanted to look strong in front of Mark, but she had never imagined the cost. She had thrown a pebble into a pond, not knowing she had just started an avalanche. For the next 2 days, Lily tried to bury the memory. She threw herself into the familiar, comforting world of her job at the Sunny Petal flower shop. The scent of damp soil and sweet blossoms, the feel of green leaves under her fingers, the simple act of arranging colors and textures into something beautiful, it was her sanctuary. She told herself it was a one-time, crazy moment. She would never see the mysterious man in black again. He was probably just passing through, a strange character in the story of her worst day. She repeated this to herself as she watered the geraniums and trimmed the rose thorns, almost starting to believe it. But on the third morning, as she walked to work, the ordinary world felt different. The air seemed quieter, the sunlight sharper. It was then that she saw it, and him. Parked across the street from the Sunny Petal was a car, a long, sleek, black machine that looked like a panther sleeping in the morning light. And leaning against it, arms crossed, was the man from the ice cream shop. Leo. He wasn't looking at his phone or smoking a cigarette. He was just standing there, perfectly still, his stormy gray eyes fixed directly on her. He made no move to approach, no gesture of greeting. He was simply a presence, a silent statement. A shiver, cold and hot at the same time, raced down Lily's spine. She quickly fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking, and rushed inside the shop, locking the door behind her even though it was time to open. From the safety of the shop window, hidden behind a display of sunflowers, she watched him. He didn't leave. He just stood there, a statue of quiet power, for a full hour before he finally got into his car and drove away, the vehicle moving with a silent, expensive purr. Lily let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her mind was reeling. Why was he here? What did he want? The fear was real, a prickling on her skin, but underneath it was something else, something she was afraid to name, a flicker of curiosity, a strange sense of being seen. Later that afternoon, a customer came in, a man with a loud voice and impatient eyes. He wanted a specific type of orchid they didn't have, and when Lily politely explained this, he became rude, his words short and condescending, complaining about the service. Lily, flustered, simply took his order for a different bouquet and endured his bad mood until he left. It was an unpleasant but normal part of working with the public, and she forgot about it by the end of the day. The next morning, however, her boss, Mrs. Gable, called her into the back room. "Lily, did something happen yesterday with a customer? A Mr. Henderson?" Mrs. Gable asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. Lily's heart sank, thinking she was in trouble. She started to explain the rude man, but Mrs. Gable held up a hand. "He called me first thing this morning," she said, sounding bewildered. "He apologized profusely. He said he was completely out of line and that he hoped you would accept his apology. He even insisted on paying double for his order." Lily was stunned. She had never mentioned the incident to anyone. There was only one explanation, a shadowy figure who saw everything and decided to intervene. Leo's presence became a constant, unpredictable thread in the tapestry of her life. She would see him outside her community college campus, leaning against the same black car, watching the students stream past, but his gaze always finding her. He was there at the city park, sitting on a bench far away as she ate her lunch on her favorite bench, a book open but unread on her lap. He never tried to stop her, never called out her name, never demanded a conversation. He was a guardian ghost, a silent sentinel. And slowly, insidiously, her fear began to transform. The initial panic softened into a wary confusion, and then into a bizarre, comforting sense of security. Walking home at dusk, she no longer jumped at every sound. When a group of loud men walked past her, she noticed how their eyes would flicker towards the black car idling down the street and they would quickly quiet down and look away. She was living in an invisible bubble of protection she never asked for, but was starting to feel she couldn't live without. It was this new sense of safety that Mark, her ex-boyfriend, somehow sensed from a distance. He heard whispers, through friends of friends, that a very important, very dangerous man was watching over Lily. His jealousy, which had once been a tool to hurt her, now curdled into a desire to reclaim what he thought was his. He decided he had made a mistake. He would win her back. He arrived at the Sunny Petal one afternoon with a massive, extravagant bouquet of red roses, the kind he had never bought her when they were together. He put on his most charming smile, the one that used to make her melt. "Lily," he said, his voice smooth. "I was an idiot. A fool. Seeing you with someone else made me realize what I lost. Can we please talk? Just give me another chance." Lily looked at him, at the roses that felt like a bribe, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even pity. Just a hollow emptiness. "No, Mark," she said, her voice calm and firm. "It's over. Please leave." But Mark was not used to being told no. His smile tightened. He took a step closer, his voice dropping, losing its fake sweetness. "Come on, Lily. Don't be like that. You don't know what kind of guy that is. You belong with me. We had something real." He reached out to grab her arm, and in that moment, the little bell on the shop door chimed, not with its usual happy tinkle, but with a sound of cold, final authority. Leo stood in the doorway. He hadn't made a sound entering. He filled the space, his presence sucking all the air and noise from the room. His eyes, those stormy gray eyes, went from Lily's frightened face to Mark's hand, which was still reaching for her. Leo didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply took 3 slow, measured steps into the shop. Each footfall was quiet, but it echoed in the sudden silence. He moved to stand directly between Lily and Mark, his back to her, shielding her completely. He was a wall of solid black. He looked down at Mark, and his gaze was so cold, so utterly devoid of emotion, that Mark's confident posture crumpled. The color drained from his face. Leo didn't even need to raise his voice. He spoke in that same low, calm rumble Lily remembered from the ice cream shop, a voice that promised consequences without having to name them. "She said no," Leo stated, the word simple and absolute. "The lady has made herself clear. You will not come here again. You will not look at her again. You will forget she exists. Do you understand?" Mark, his bravado completely gone, could only manage a shaky nod. He dropped the expensive roses on the floor as if they were on fire and practically scrambled out of the shop, not looking back. Once Mark was gone, Leo finally turned to face Lily. The coldness in his eyes was gone, replaced by that same intense, searching look. "He will not bother you again," he said, and it wasn't a hope or a guess. It was a simple statement of fact, as certain as the sunrise. Lily stood there, surrounded by the vibrant, fragile beauty of her flowers, looking at this man who was both her greatest fear and her most certain protector. The line between them was blurring, and she knew, with a terrifying and exciting certainty, that her life was no longer her own. He had drawn a circle around her, and she was standing right in the center of it. The silence in the flower shop after Mark's hurried escape was heavier than any noise. It was a thick, tangible thing, filled with the lingering scent of fallen roses and the ghost of Leo's unspoken power. Lily stood frozen, her gaze locked on the man who had just reshaped her world with a few quiet words. He had not asked if she was okay. He had simply made the problem disappear, as effortlessly as brushing a leaf from a petal. This was the reality of Leo. He didn't solve problems, he erased them. And as he turned those stormy gray eyes toward her, Lily felt the final walls around her heart begin to tremble. Fear was still there, a faint, sensible whisper in her mind, but it was being drowned out by a louder, more compelling feeling, a desperate, burning need to understand. 4 days, she lived in a state of suspended animation. Leo continued his silent vigil, a constant, watchful shadow. He was there in the morning mist outside her apartment, a dark silhouette against the waking city. He was there in the evening gloom, his headlights cutting soft paths through the dusk as he followed her bus home, ensuring she reached her door. He provided a security detail she never saw, but often felt, a polite, serious-faced man who would suddenly be sitting a few tables away at the library, or a woman who would coincidentally be jogging on the same path in the park at the exact same time every evening. Lily was living in a gilded cage whose bars were made of pure, unwavering attention. She was safe, cherished, and utterly confused. The confusion finally boiled over one rainy Thursday. She had stayed late at the Sunny Petal, reorganizing the stockroom, and when she stepped out, the world was slick and shimmering under the streetlights. And there he was, of course, standing by his car under a large black umbrella. He didn't wave her over. He simply waited. Something in Lily snapped. The questions, the fear, the strange, growing attraction, it all became too much. She marched across the wet pavement, the rain soaking her hair, not caring about the water or the cold. She stopped right in front of him, her chin tilted up in defiance, her eyes blazing with a mix of anger and raw vulnerability. "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling not from fear now, but from a torrent of pent-up emotion. "Why are you doing this? Why are you following me? Why do you care what happens to me? Who are you, really?" Leo looked down at her, his face unreadable in the dim light. The rain pattered a soft rhythm on his umbrella. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gently moved the umbrella to hold it over both of them, shielding her from the downpour while his own shoulder grew damp. The simple, chivalrous act disarmed her anger more than any words could have. "From the moment you walked up to me," he began, his voice a low rumble that blended with the rain, "you were different." He spoke slowly, carefully, as if choosing each word from a deep well of thought. "The world is full of people who are weak, who lie, who pretend. You were brave. You were honest in your desperation. You had a fire in you that your foolish boyfriend tried to extinguish. I saw that fire." He paused, his gaze intense. "I protect what is precious to me, what is rare and real. And you, Lily, are the most real thing I have ever seen." He went on then, in that calm, steady voice, to tell her the truth. He explained that his name was Leo, and that he was a man of significant influence. He told her that many people were afraid of him, that his world was one of shadows and hard decisions, a world far removed from the sunny, simple beauty of her flower shop. He didn't glorify it or apologize for it. He stated it as a simple fact, like the color of the sky or the falling of the rain. "I am not a perfect man, Lily," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "My life is complicated. My hands are not always clean. But I need you to understand this one thing. I would never, ever use my power to hurt you. The strength that frightens others? I will use it only as a shield for you. The control that commands respect? I will use it only to give you a life where you are free to be yourself, always." Lily listened, the rain in his words washing over her. She saw the truth in his eyes. She saw the kindness that lay beneath the cold, controlled exterior. She saw the lonely man who commanded empires but had been captivated by a single, brave act from a heartbroken girl in an ice cream shop. He wasn't trying to own her. He was trying to deserve her. And in that moment, all her confusion melted away, leaving behind a feeling so clear and so warm it stole her breath. She was not afraid of Leo. She was falling in love with him. He drove her home that night in a comfortable silence. When they reached her apartment building, he walked her to her door, the umbrella held carefully over her. They stood under the soft glow of the porch light, the world around them quiet and still. "May I kiss you, Lily?" he asked, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Not for anyone else. Not for a game. Just for you. Just for us." This time, there was no desperation, no audience, no plan. There was only the truth of the moment. Lily looked up into his face, into the eyes of the man who had seen her at her most broken and had chosen to build her back up, not for his own gain, but for hers. She saw his protectiveness, his patience, his deep, unwavering respect for her. She nodded, a single, sure movement. "Yes," she whispered. Leo leaned down, and his lips met hers. This kiss was nothing like the first. That one had been a claim, a performance of power. This one was a question, a promise, and a surrender all at once. It was gentle and deep, warm and incredibly tender. It was a kiss that spoke of lonely nights ending and new days beginning. It was a kiss that held all the words they hadn't yet said. It felt like coming home. When they finally parted, both were breathless, connected by an invisible thread that felt as strong as steel. He kept her hand in his thumb gently stroking her knuckles. "I told you once that I don't let go of what is mine," he murmured. "But I want you to choose to be mine, Lily. Every day. I promise you, I will spend my life making sure you are safe, and loved, and happy. No one will ever hurt your heart again. Not while I am breathing." Tears of pure, uncomplicated joy welled in Lily's eyes. She wasn't being claimed like a prize. She was being chosen, as deeply as she had chosen him. What began as a reckless act to make another man jealous had led her to the one man who wanted her for all that she was, fiery, emotional, and strong. She had stumbled into the shadow of a king and found not darkness, but a love so bright it outshone everything she had ever known. She had touched the Mafia Boss, and in return, he had gently, patiently, mended her broken heart. And as they stood there, hand in hand under the porch light, the future stretched out before them, not as a threat, but as a beautiful, shared promise. If your heart is beating a little faster for Leo and Lily, you're not alone. This story of a desperate kiss that became a legendary love is just the beginning. To make sure you never miss a moment of their passionate, protective, and utterly captivating world, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Their story is far from over, and the next chapter is one you won't want to miss.